Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. It has been 253 days since we've started reading, with 572 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 56 pages left to go, and the 91.08% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 36 of Wake, the podcast that is building connections, throwing the door wide open, and showing the world there is an appetite for reading the daunting, all in the name of fulfilling a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I'm your host, Toby Malone, joined once again by the man who is all about family and friends, TJ Young. Hi, TJ.
Oh, hi, Toby. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're back in school. It was -9 degrees here yesterday. I'm just, making it through.
Yeah.
It's what seems to be the longest winter I've ever experienced.
This polar vortex is no joke. The other day, I'm talking in Celsius now, is that there was a 71-degree difference between how cold it was here in Canada and how cold it is back home where I'm from in Perth, in Australia. So 71 degrees. So they're sweltering down there and we're freezing up here. But
they can have some of it,
Yeah. It's a lot. But it's good to see you. It's been too long. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded.
It has been. I got incredibly sick. I don't know what was happening around the holidays, but there was just an illness sweeping across the state. Everyone I know got sick over the Christmas, New Year sort of holiday, and I just couldn't kick it. It was like 2.5 weeks for me where I'd feel better, and then we would set a date, and then I'd be like, "I'm so sorry. I feel like absolute crud."
And
it kept happening like that, and it was funny. I actually didn't realize how bad the pressure had gotten in my head. And Taylor and we just went out for food, and I went in the bathroom and I blew my nose, and my ears popped so bad, Toby. I got dizzy and I almost fell down.
Oh man!
And I told Taylor, I was like, I can finally hear. He's like, I didn't want to say anything, but like, you've been blaring everything for the past week and a half, and I was like, you really can't hear it.
Oh, amazing. Oh, no. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better now. Part of me is kind of a little sad that we didn't get to record a Wake with you in that condition to hear how your reading would have been without me equilibrium.
Just yelling.
But there'd be something to be said about a reading like that. And so the other reason we've been busy, obviously school has gone back, and we've all been busy with things like the Kennedy Center American College Theatre Festival, of which you're a major part of Region 2. And I want to congratulate you, very proud of you, that you won the Kennedy Center Gold Medal for the top educator in the region for the year. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was surprising. I was sad you weren't there.
I was sad I wasn't there too. Yeah. I saw that and I thought, oh man, this could have been the year that I could have been there. But it's austerity measures. There are no money for guests anymore out from out of state.
There's not. I will say, and then I will say this: they gave it to me right before a production of The Inseparables, which my show was there, which was great. But then also they had the Thanksgiving play running at the same time, right? And so I had seen The Inseparables the night before, and I was planning on going to see the Thanksgiving play, but it felt irresponsible to sit in the theater with just a giant gold medal the whole time. So I was like, no, I'm going to go back to the hotel and put this away.
And The Inseparables, of course, if anyone has missed any references to it over the years, is the play that TJ wrote that I dramaturged, which is taking over the world right now. So
Canada loves it.
We built it from the ground up.
From
an idea that just is exploding. So if you haven't read it yet, check out The Inseparables on the New Play Exchange. I will link to that in the show notes.
It's fun and goofy.
Yeah, it is. It's the Three Musketeers, but through the lens of backstage at the theatre. So yeah, it feels like home to us. Speaking of home and so we got the wedding coming up for you in May, which we're looking forward to. And I mentioned family and friends in the intro because today's a slightly different kind of episode. This is very much a family and friends kind of episode. We have no guest appearing with us today in person, but we are going to be hearing a few voices of family and friends later on, thanks to pre-record sections read by some of my favourite people who had agreed to my eager inquiries about reading some of the Wake. And it's funny because so many of them, I was really pressuring them, saying it has to happen today, it has to happen today. And then, of course, you got sick and then you were away. And so, I actually had tons of time.
It got done, but it got done.
It did. I've had these recordings sitting here for weeks. So these were people we couldn't really nail down for an entire episode. So I thought what I'll do is I'll just grab them and say, read 2 pages for me. I'm going to record it and then I'll pop it in later on. So I offered them a chance to read a couple pages each. And I recorded brief conversations with them before they read and then after they read, which was really fun. So I just want to introduce you all to these 3 readers now before we get going. So our first guest is Patrick Robinson, who is one of my oldest and best friends. And he and I went through the wars together in the doctoral program at the University of Toronto. We wrote our comprehensive exam together. And he and I have been buddies for close to 20 years now. So we have a regular standing social commitment where we get together. It used to be once a month. It's less than that now where we've got kids. And the price of admission to get into this dinner is that everyone had to bring 8 cans of Guinness. And so we would show up with 8 cans of Guinness and then we would drink them all and catch up and see how. So he runs a theatre program here in Toronto now. Very recently, he came over with 8 cans of Guinness and we drank heavily. And I've been trying to get him on Wake for a long time. And every time I text him to say, hey, what about coming on Wake? He would ghost that text. He would just ignore it because he felt a little daunted by it. So this time, what I decided to do was feed him 3 or 4 cans of Guinness, then drag him downstairs to my microphone and give him no choice. And this is what happened. So, this is a recording of Patrick before the reading and when we first got set up with the Irish courage flowing in our veins. Okay, I'm sitting here with my great friend, Patrick Robinson. Welcome, Patrick, to Wake.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you're here. I've been wrestling you into submission over coming onto Wake for quite a while now. Can you give me just a little bit of your background with? You don't have very much background with James Joyce.
No, I have no background whatsoever. In fact, the only things I know about Joyce are things you have just told me in the last 2 or 3 minutes. That's about all I've got.
We should also say what we have in front of us and what we have several of inside of us are 3 or 4 pints of Guinness.
Yes.
So you're over for a drink tonight, and so
yes.
So I decided the only way I was going to get Patrick to come on the podcast was to ply him with Guinness and then surprise him.
This is true. This is true.
So I'm very glad that you're here. So we met at graduate school, and so you were what was your studies in back then?
Well, it was theatre.
Yeah,
like you. Yes.
But you were working on other works of Maeterlinck, is that right?
I was. Yes. The end of the 20th century, or sorry, the 19th century.
Yeah. The Shakespeare of Belgium.
The Shakespeare of Belgium. Yes, absolutely.
So in terms of so we both have this theatre background. Do you have much in terms of your background with novels? Things like what Joyce is doing. Do you have a novel like a favorite novelist, or is it mostly theatre based?
No, I think I'm coming to this very cold.
Okay, that is the best way. That's what we like to hear from Wake. Well, I'm very glad to have you here on Wake, and I'm very excited to hear what the first ever reading of Finnegans Wake on Wake with Guinness in hand sounds like. So, I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Me too. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So that is my friend Patrick.
Amazing. I love also hearing the tipsy yawn in the middle of that.
Yeah, what do you think about the idea of performing while drinking? Is this a bad idea, or how do you go?
Oh, okay. So I don't know if I've ever told you this. I once performed in a musical called Beer Pong the Musical, where I played
Right.
beer pong live on stage, and I played two different characters, and in the first team I had to lose, which meant I drank a lot of beer in the first half of the show, and then I had to last to the second half of the show. So I want to say that by the end of the show I had drinking 6 beers. And I did that every night for like a month and a half.
Oh,
so, I'm here for it.
Did it get easier?
It did. And to the point where I was like, I shouldn't be doing this every night. But it was definitely, it enhanced the performances some nights it hindered. But, I think about like Shit-Faced Shakespeare
Yeah.
or Drunk Shakespeare and things like that. And I know friends who've participated in those companies. I'm all for like libations, making things more lively every now and then.
Exactly. It's interesting when you're working off a script. Obviously, it's a slightly different thing. Things like Drunk History, the YouTube thing, hilarious, but not scripted. So that's the fun of it. So anyway, so that's Patrick. Obviously, the sound quality on Patrick, because Patrick was sitting so far back from the microphone because he did not want to be there. He's a very shy man. But I didn't give him a choice. I strong-armed him into it. And afterwards, he was quite pleased. So you'll hear his reading during the read-through, and then you'll hear his reaction at the end. The second guest who's coming in is a member of my family, my brilliant nephew, Nikhil Krishnaswamy, who is 14 years old, lives in Montreal, speaks multiple languages, writes his own books, and we recorded this over the holidays. And as you'll hear, he's an incredibly insightful and sensitive reader. He really read so beautifully when he read The Wake and was very interested in what all this could mean. He's a real thinker. And so afterwards, after we finished up, I texted his mum and thanked her for setting it all up. And she wrote back and said that he loved doing it, and he noted that he was, quote, trying to sound intelligent on Uncle Toby's Intelligent Person podcast. So welcome to Uncle Toby's Intelligent Person podcast. And
I think that's the name of the next project.
I think it might be. Yeah. I think people would listen. So anyway, I love that, and I loved having Nikhil here. And here is the interview I did with Nikhil. Our next guest here on Wake is my nephew, Nikhil Krishnaswamy. It's really nice to have you here, Nick.
Hi, it's good to see you. Thank you.
Fantastic. I was so pleased to be able to get you on to Wake this week because you are a writer. Is that right? So you love writing?
I like writing books. I like the English language in general, and I'm really excited to read this book.
Fantastic. Yeah, sorry. Absolutely. Well, at least start on this book. I mean, you can always come back to it. So, so how old are you?
I'm 14 currently.
14.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And a very smart 14 you are in high school in Montreal. And last summer we met up and we talked about Finnegans Wake, and you were so curious about what this was because you really like reading difficult things or really like reading challenging things. What would you say is the most challenging book you've ever read?
I'm not really sure. Just pronunciation-wise, like having a trouble with pronouncing some of the things included was probably some of the earlier Shakespeare books until I got used to the rhythm there.
Right.
But other than that, no. The only thing I've really found hard about some of the books I've read is just their length. But since I've kind of previewed this, this looks different. Like, it's grammatically very difficult. It's like I think I'm mispronouncing some of the things here.
That's okay. Don't worry about that. To make you feel any better, I mispronounce things all the time on this podcast. So that's sort of part of it. And so this is great. So, and you're writing a book at the moment. Your mum was telling me.
Yeah. So I was just experimenting. I've written a few drafts for beginning chapters of the book, and I decided to work together with my friend on it because he also likes writing stuff. So far, we've finished part 1 and part 2 of the book, so we're at like maybe 30 chapters so far.
Amazing! That's wonderful. Are you planning to publish it when you're finished?
I'm not sure. I'm generally pretty nervous about like putting anything in the public, but I don't know. Maybe if we both like it by the end. We're just doing this until we run out of ideas.
Oh,
I love that. I can hear how straight he's sitting, you know?
Oh yeah, he's such a good boy. Yeah, he works so hard. He really is a thinker, and he speaks English, French, and Tamil, and also I think Mandarin. He's got a little bit of. Went to a Mandarin daycare, so he has a lot of that too. He's a very smart boy, and yeah, and it's fun. I mean, you have nieces and nephews, right?
I do. Oh, do I?
It's fun. It's fun. It's fun being an uncle, right?
It really is. I mean, my favorite part is I can give them back, but I do love seeing them absolutely fall in love with something. My youngest nephew, Toby, you and him would be best friends. So he is learning the trumpet via YouTube. He got one for Christmas, and he is just taking it in. But also, he's like in second grade. Right. And when I tell you, he can tell you everything that's happening on a football field in a way that is kind of terrifying. And he yells at the TV like a grown man. So
I love that. I was watching one of the NFL games the other day, and I was interacting as usual. And my wife said from the next room, she says, "I can never tell if you're happy or sad when you shout at the television like that." I'm like, I'm not either. I'm watching two teams I don't care about. I'm just exclaiming when something interesting happens. Yeah, that's. Well, it sounds like yeah, I'd get on very well with your nephew. So, yeah, it's nice to be an uncle. I think it's fun.
It is, and he also loves The Wiz. And I was like, this is great. He fell in love with Pokemon cards, and I got to send him all my old ones, and he thought he had hit the jackpot. I was like, this is great. I'm good.
Amazing. That's awesome. And then finally, we were hoping to welcome my good friend Kareem Morgan, who was a long-lost friend who I lost track of for a little while until we connected last year. Kareem and I met when we were both actors more than 20 years ago in a production of Romeo and Juliet, where I played Romeo and he played Benvolio. And he's a wonderful Jamaican-Canadian man who is not acting anymore. Now he runs a beautiful restaurant up in the north of Ontario. But unfortunately, there was a scheduling clash. He's a very busy man, so he wasn't able to join us. So I'm just going to name check him here and thank him for trying to fit us in. But without Kareem, I turned to another expert that I had on hand, and I felt like this was a good substitute. So here they are. Our next guest here on Wake is a surprise guest. At least it was a surprise to her, because up till 10 minutes ago when she got home from school, she didn't know I was going to ask her to do this. I'd like to welcome back to Wake my daughter, Bridie Malone. Hi, Bride.
Hi.
You look really mad at me. You don't look mad at me. You're smiling really broad. But So just to give you a little bit of context, our friend Kareem, who you love, right? Kareem is an old friend of mine, was going to appear on the podcast to read a couple pages, and Kareem got really busy with work. So I was unable to fit Kareem into today's episode. So then that meant I had 2 pages left that needed reading. And so I thought, who better to read than Bridie, who is the best reader I know. And particularly since you heard your cousin reading the other day, and you were like, oh, he did pretty well, right?
Yeah.
So you've appeared on Awake before.
I have.
And how did you think that turned out?
I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, you were weird hearing your own voice.
It was.
Was it fun? A little bit fun getting to do it.
It was fun.
And you like reading. You like reading hard
reading.
books. Like you're into like big long series and really in depth kinds of mythologies and stuff. So this kind of thing, and you're good at language. You just came home with a story that you wrote from school. Tell everyone what you got for your mark for that story.
I got 97%.
97%. You didn't capitalize the word day on Christmas Day, which maybe that was the problem. Anyway, so you're very smart. And last time you did one of these, I gave you a little bit of time to practice and to prepare and to look at all the words, right?
Yeah.
This time, how much time have I given you to practice and look at the words?
Absolutely none.
Absolutely none. You haven't even looked at it at all. So it's all going to be fun. Anyway, and the other thing that's coming up next week, what's happening next week?
My 13th birthday.
You're about to turn 13, and this is my present to you.
Yay!
My gift to you is a little bit of James Short.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's always good to have Bridie back. She did a little reading months ago, but as you'll hear, she did just fine with a cold read, a real cold read. So that'll be fun.
Probably better than me. So
No, God, no. We are both becoming illuminated with our our ability with this, I believe. But anyway, it's good to have special guests. However, it's always nice just to have the two of us in the room, just to hang out. And so we're looking forward to going through that. So yeah, it's been so long since we caught up. I feel as though before we get started in the reading, I just thought we'd catch up with some of the other stuff that's happening. I don't know if you noticed this or you saw this that happened at the end of December, and is that there was a global Guinness shortage.
I did notice that.
Which is crazy because a lot of people were saying, that my father-in-law went to get Guinness for Christmas for me when we came to visit, and he's like, I got the last 4 cans in Ottawa because they weren't available. And so there was this shortage because Guinness has become spectacularly successful now. And then there was this great Guinness heist. where these thieves in England stole a truck that carrying the equivalent of 35,000 pints of Guinness.
I love that so much. They're like, you know what? We need this. It's better than gold.
It is. I think if this was a more fastidious podcast, I might have looked up to find out whether or not they found it. They probably did, or they at least just followed the swerving skid marks of the truck as they kept tapping the pints, or they sold it on the Guinness black market. I'm not sure, but it's stories like that make the UK. Well, that happen in the UK, but make Ireland special.
Oh yeah, world news. I'm always like, this. I want that kind of crazy,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting. We for stories like that. The other thing that I came up with over the last couple of months or couple of weeks in terms of obsessions, I tend to get obsessed about stuff. You know this, is that there's a podcast who are friends with us on Instagram called the Three Castles Burning podcast, which is a podcast all about Dublin history, and it's a beautiful podcast, and I've been listening to it a lot. I've been literally listening to 10 episodes a day. It's gone to a lot, but I love it so much. And I really want to direct people towards Three Castles Burning, even if you're not from Ireland. I think it's most interesting if you are from there. But stories like this about the Guinness heist and things like that, this podcast really delves into the history, and there's some beautiful ones. There's ones that you'd really appreciate, TJ. There's one about the Playboy riots, when the Playboy of the Western World riots happened.
That's one of my favorite riots.
Absolutely.
That and the Rite of Spring, give me that all day.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a beautiful episode all about that. There's an episode all about Lucia Joyce, James's daughter. There's one about the founding of Bloomsday. There's some really beautiful things that come up. So that it's really sort of delving into the fabric of what Dublin is. So I love that.
I want to get back to the point where art makes people riot like that. Yeah. Do I? No.
Well,
kind of.
Yeah. I mean, what are they rioting for? Because I think a lot of it was the idea of decency and what is decent. And, the idea of decency was the thing that nearly had all of Dubliners burnt up.
Exactly.
And Ulysses banned from the United States for so long and all that kind of stuff. So that it's questionable whether or not it becomes part of puritanical world, and I don't know if we're heading back to that or what. But I mean, that old school style thing sometimes is a good thing. There's another resource that we connected to on Instagram that we have talked about in the past, which is Sweeney's Pharmacy in Dublin, which is often name checked in the Three Castles Burning podcast. And they recently put out a call because they're receiving a whole bunch of pressure. Someone whacked their rent up, and so this amazing resource where they do the readings, and it's essentially a museum of Joyce, is being threatened because they're struggling a little bit, and so they've opened a Patreon where you can support that. So I've subscribed to the Patreon to give them a few bucks every month, just because saving Sweeney is really important. So yeah, if you are interested in saving Sweeney, we are very much endorsing that resource. So yeah, go save Sweeney. And the last thing I wanted to say, we missed it last week because we forgot that the episode was coming out around this time, so we're a week late. But James Joyce's birthday was on the 2nd of February, and don't you think it's so fitting that Joyce was born on Groundhog Day?
I really do.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That feels like just very, really so fitting.
we're waiting to see what it's like when something wakes up, and how do they feel about it? How's it going to change things?
And it feels kind of fitting that here we're in the final section of book 3 as the dreamer is stirring. We're really getting a sense of that groundhog that's happening here in Finnegans Wake. So why don't we get to the reading? I know this has been a long introduction, so those of you who like to skip through our intro to get to the reading, what's wrong with you? We're very entertaining.
Rude, you know?
Exactly. But so hopefully it hasn't been too much of an imposition. But today we're going to start reading, as always, as from the Penguin Modern Classics edition of Finnegans Wake, published in 2000 with a foreword by Seamus Dean. Today we'll be reading the first part of chapter 3-4 with the final chapter of book 3. So today we end book 3, if you can believe it. We're reading from pages 572 to 590 in this edition. This continues the segment with the detailed title that we heard in the previous episode. It's a big long one. Dawn, an intensely structured chapter and a shift, relatively speaking, from the surrealism of all that's gone before to a degree of realism. We seem to float with two narrators down through the chapel-ised night, inn at night, describing the sleeping inhabitants, the porters, and others, all versions of characters already encountered. A small nocturnal domestic drama unfolds. One of the twins, Jerry, wakes. His mother soothes him back to sleep, so we've already seen all that. The parents have sex. It happened, but we didn't notice it. Dawn approaches. The husband slumbers. The husband slumbers, anxious with money problems. Same. The chapter rotates around 4 points of view, camera positions signaled by 4 musical chords. Thus says the Oxford World's Classic edition of 2012 in its usual useless style, which this edition also includes brief summaries of what's happening in each subsection, which we will address at the end of the reading. And now, without further ado, Finnegans Wake.
Can't ear her Dortis Orphy? Woofy? Her Eskmino daughter's hope? Whoopee? Elmi, Eskmi stoon soon. Let us consider. The procurator interrogarius Melterum presents us his proposer. Honoferus is a concuspent ex-service major who has major dishonest propositions to all. He is considered to have committed, invoking droti de Aurelier, simple infidelities with Felicia, a virgin, to be practicing for unnatural coits with Eugenius and Jeremias, 2 or 3 Philadelphians. Honopharius, Felicia, Eugenius, and Jeremias are consanguineous to the lowest degree. Anita, the wife of Honopharius, has been told by their tiresome Forticia that Honopharius has blasphemously confessed under voluntary chastisement that he has instructed his slave Maritarius to urge Magavarius, a commercial Emilius of Honopharius, to solicit the chastity of Anita. Anita is informed by some illegitimate children of Forticia with Maritarius. The supposition is Wares that Gilead, the schematical wife of Magavarius, is visited clandestinely by Barnabas, the advocate of Honopharius, an immoral person who has been corrupted by Germanius. Gilead, a cooler blend, D'Alton insists, exwo, with Papara, Papia, Arancitia, Clara, Marinuza, Indra, and Iodina, has been tenderly debauched in Holly's Day's view by Honopharius, and Magavarius knows from spies that Anita has formerly committed double sacrilege with Michael, Virgo Cerularius, a perpetual curate who wishes to seduce Eugenius. Magavarius threatens to have Anita molested by Sola, an Orthodox savage, the leader of a band of 12 mercenaries, the Summaries, who desires to procure Felicia from Georgiarius, Leo, Vitellius, and Magdugalius, 4 excavators, if she will not yield to him, and also deceive Honoriferus by rendering conjugal duty when demanded. Anita, who claims to have discovered incestuous temptations from Gemarius and Eugenius, would yield to the lewdness of Honoriferus to appease the savagery of Sulla and the mercenarinesses of the 12 Sulavanian, as Gilbert at first suggested, to save the virginity of Felicia from Magravius when converted by Michael after the death of Gilia, but she fears that, by allowing his marital rights, she may cause reprehensible conduct between Eugenius and Jeremias. Michael, who has formally debauched Anita, dispenses her from yielding to Honoriferus, who pretends publicly to possess his conjunct in 39 several manners. Turapiter affirm ex cathedris Gernotis Cambronesis for carnal hygiene whenever he has rendered himself impotent to consummate by subdolences. Anita is disturbed, but Michael commentates that he will reserve her case tomorrow for the ordinary Guglamolus, even if she should practice a pious fraud during affriction, which, from experience, she knows, according to Wadding, to be leading to nullity. Forticia, however, is encouraged by Georgiarius, Leo, Vitellius, and Magdugalius reunitingly to warn Anita by describing the strong chastisements of Honoriferus and the depravities turpismus of Canicola, the deceased wife of Mauritius, with Sulla, the Simonic, who is abnegated and repents. He has he homogeny, and shall she submit? Translate, alax, you breed a Brandon in the goods of Cape and Chattertone deceased.
This, lay readers and Gentile men, is perhaps the commonest of all cases arising out of umbrella history in connection with the wood industries in our courts of litigation. Doyley Owens holds, though Fig Magnuson of himself holds also, that so long as there is a joint deposit account in the two names, a mutual obligation is posited. Owens cites Brer Fuchs and Morin, a foreign firm, since deceased, registers as Tangos Limited, for the sale of certain proprietary articles. The action, which was at the distance of the trustee of the Heathen Church Emergency Fund, suing by its trustee, a resigned civil servant, for the payment of tithes due, was heard by Judge Doyle, and also by a common jury. No question arose as to the debt, for which vouchers spoke volumes. The defence alleged that payment has been made effective. The fund trustee, one Jacundus Facundus Xero Pecundus Coppercheap, counterclaimed that payment was invalid, having been tendered to creditor under cover of a crossed cheque signed in the ordinary course in the name of Wildheim, Hurl's Cross, voucher copy provided, and drawn by the senior partner only by whom the lodgment of the species had been effected but in their joint names. The bank particularized the national misery, now almost entirely in the hands of the four chief bondholders for value in tangos, declined to pay the draft, though there were ample reserves to meet the liability, whereupon the trustee Coppercheap negotiated it for and on behalf of the fund of the thing to a client of his, a notary, from whom, on consideration, he received in exchange legal relief as between trustee and bethrust, with thanks. Since then, the cheque, a good washable pink, embossed DUD number 1132, good for the figure and face, had been circulating in the country for over 39 years among holders of Pango stock, a rival concern, though not one demonetised farthing had ever spun or fluctuated across the counter in the semblance of hard coin or liquid cash. The jury, a sour dozen of stout fellows, all of whom were curiously named after Doyles, naturally disagreed jointly and severally, and the belligerent judge, disagreeing with the allied jurors' disagreement, went outside his jurisdiction altogether and ordered a garnishee attachment to the neutral firm. No mandamus could locate the depleted Willem Brayforks, as he had entered into an ancient moratorium dating back to the times of the early barters, and only the junior partner Baron could be found, who entered an appearance and turned up upon notice of motion and after service of the motion by interlocutory injunction among the male jurors to be an absolute turf woman, originally from the proletarian class, and with still a good title to her sex name of Anne Doyle, a Coppinger's Cottages, the Doyle's country. Doyle, Anne, add woman in, having regretfully left the jury boxes, protested cheerfully on the stand in a long jury myad in re-corset checks, delivered in Doylish, that she had often, in supply to brusque demands rising almost to boiling point, discounted Mr. Breakforth's first, of all in exchange 9 months from date without issue, and, to be strictly literal, unbottled in corroboration a current account of how she had been made at sight for services rendered the payee draw ye of unwashable blank assignations, sometimes Pink Williams, laughter, but more often of the creme de citron, vert email, pain coq, or marshmallow series, which she, as bearer, used to endorse adhesively to her various payers' drawers, who in most cases were identified by the timber papers as well-known tetagists of the city and suburban. The witness, at her own request, asked if she might, and wrought something between the sheets of music paper which she had accompanied herself with for the occasion, and this having been handed up for the bench to look at in camera, Coppinger's doll, as she was called, Ananias, Mac Ursa's Dar, the adopted child, then proposed to Jerrykin and Jurines and every Jim, Jock and Jarry in that little green courting housie for her satisfaction, and as a whole act of settlement to re-amalgamate herself, tomorrow perforce, in partnership with the permanent suing fond trustee Monsignor Peppergy, under the new style of Will Breakfast and Sperrum, as when all his cognizances had been entreated, he seemed to proffer the steadiest interest towards her, but this pre-proposal was ruled out on appeal by Judge Jeremy Doyler, who, reserving judgment in a matter of courts and reversing the findings of the lower correctional, found beyond doubt of treason, fending the dissentents of the pick-pack panel, 12 as upright Judases as ever let down their thumbs, and occupanti extremum scabi, handed down to the jury of the Liffey that, as a matter of tact, the woman they gave as free was born into contractual incapacity, the Caliph of Man v. the Odalisque Company. When, how, and where Memmi's Mansipcum Act did not apply, and therefore held supremely that, as no property in law can exist in a corpse, Hal Kilbride versus Una Bellina, Peppergy's pact was pure piffle, loud laughter, and Warham would whistle for the rhino. Will you, won't you, Pango with Peppergy? Not for Nancy. How dare you do? And phew, 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 phew.
He sighed in his sleep. Let us go back, lest ye forewaken. Hide ourselves, while hovering dream wings, folding around, will hide from fears my wee mannequin. Keep my big wig, long, strong monomen. Guard my bairn, mon beau. To bed. Prospector, projector, and boom master, giant builder of all causeways whatsoever, hopping off point and true terminus of strack straight cuts and corkscrewn perambulopes. Zeal whence to go whither, wanderlust, in sequence to which every muckle must make its mickle, as different as York from Leeds, being the only wise in a muck's world, to look on itself from beforehand, Mirror-minded curiosities, and wood to the large which bring hills to the mole hunter, home through first husband, perils behind swine, and horsepower down Hungerford. Prick this man and tit up this woman, our forced parents. Boggy Bobbo with his cunningest cauchemar, almost sounds French. Big Mace Master and Finnegan with Phoenicia Parks, lame of his ear and gape of her leg. Most correctingly, we beseech of you, down their ladder case of night watch service, and bring them at suntime, fiesh with the nethermost gangrene of their stepchildren. Guide them through the labyrinth of their semilikes, and the alteragoses of their pseudo selves. Hedge them both ways of all roamers whose names are Ligius. Ligius, it means religious, but whatever. From the loss of bearings, deliver them. So they keep to their rights and beware of duty frees, Neolithic Smith and Magdalian Ginny Jones. Mandragon Moor and weak Faducky, Morian Male and Thridacian Mad, Basilisk Glorious with his weenie queenie, Tiger Knack and Swan's Grace. He has hail as his arduries, she has verve as her veins. This prime white arsenic with bismate alloyed, martial sin with peccadilly, free to lease hold with first mortgage, Dowser Dower and Dipper Deuce, stop that war and feel this feather. Norse blood heartened and lands smool washable. Great gas with fun in the corner. Grand slam with fall of the trick. Solemn one and Chevy. Cod and Coney. Cash and carry. In all we dreamed, the part we dreaded. Corsair coupled with his dame. Royal bibber but constant lymph, Boniface and bonny features, nasal nose and river mouth, bang the charge and batter the bolster, big smoke and lickly rosely, humanity's farman, by society leader, Voguner and Truly, Bumpered and Elf, Urlugomur with Midiburo, leaks and awfully, basal cursed yet grace abunda. Reggie's protector with Screendall vedette, peg of his claim and pride of her heart. Cliffscar grizzly, but rock dove cooning. Odin's Hodenstag on Frigabet. Baron and feme, that he may dish cover her, that she may uncouple him, that one may come and crumple them, that they may soon recoup themselves, now and then, time on time again, as per periodicity, from Neves to Wilses, from Bushmills to Enos, to goers from Harlem, to hearths of oak from skittish widows, via mala, hiberpas, heshkiswe per alptrak, though lands vague and vain, after many mandelays, in their first case to the next place, till their cozen carries the high and the by, both pent and plain, cross cow silks, yellow, past pumpkins, pinioned, purplesome, be they whacked to the wide, or other tied to the hustings, long sizzle roads neath Arthruseat, him to the derby, her to the tune, till Sengitide do Codlam, in the grounds of Unterlinen, rule Toulouse and Cani, at Shipside by Covent Garden, monk and sempstress in sackcloth silkily, curious dreamers, curious dramas, curious demean, Plagius Dayman, plagiist dearest, plagiist durest, for the Strangeford players are protesting, and the Carkery villains dry flooring it, and the lepertized lados railing the way, blump for Solgo slee. Stop. Did a stir? No. Is fast. On to bed. So he is. It's only the wind on the road outside, for to wake all the shivering shanks from snoring.
But, God, his villain, who will he be? This Mater man, some king of the East, in his trizzy-grayed bronze wig, with the snow in his mouth and the Caspian asthma, so bulked of build? Relics of Farah and Livite, Dick Gill, Tum Lung, or McFinnan's cool Harnik? He has only the Heed's Coast casket on and his Woolsey's shirt fleece and Pede's cod doublet. Also, his feet wear doubled with socks, for he always must to ensure warm sleep between a pair of fully fleeced bankers with a finnock in a cowl. Can thus be Mithar Norkman that keeps our hotel? Begor, Mr. Osorgman, you're looking right well. Heckler's champion ethni- eth- ethnicist. How deft as a fusher shoe woos darft as a fish. He's the dibbler's own dodges for Dublin exists, but a jolly fine decent form of one word. He's rounding up on his family. And who is the bodykin by him, sir? So Volzival Valsihi, with yibes and zabs. Her Trixie's trails is tripping her vop. Luck at the way for the lucre of smoke. She's looping the lamp. Why, that's old Missness. Wipe them dry. Well, 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 so well. Dawn and water. RDCS me. With her half bend as proud as a pension, all balmy, and her trout back, quiver lip, Nanya, and her step to Jasmine's colon buzzle, happy tea area, naughty gay fru, selling sunlit soaps to wash out winches and rind cold draughts to the props of his pubs. She tipped lipping the swells at Pont d'Esly till she jumped the boom at Brown's mouth. Now she's bored his head under Hatesbury's hatch and loomed his fate to Old Love Lane. And she's just the same old Haproth of dripping. She's even brent her hair. Which route are they going? Why? Angel, Sitter, or Amen Corner, Norswood, Southwalk, or Euston Waste? The solvent man and his upper Gabinson, with not a breath against him, and the wee whipping woman's housey? They're coming Turug, their diamond wedding tour. Giants Itchley, Elfkins L, vesting their characters Vix Development, Andis Aller, Athos Air, our first day man, and your dresser and mine, that Luxemburger Evac Celeste Alzette. Conklick Shire with the Quincy Countess, Stepney's shipchild with the waif of his bosun, Dunmouth's Flitcher with Duck on the Rock, down the scales, the way they went up, under talls and treading tormentors, shunning the straps, and slipping the sliders, risking a runaway, ruining revels, from Elder Arbor to La Puree, skipping the clock back, crystals and carbon, sweetheartedly. Hot and cold, and electricary, with attendance and lounge and promenade free. In spite of all the science could boot or art could eke, bolt and grindin', cave and cannon, single rex for a week, double axe for the male, and quick quack quack or for the radiocy. Renove that Bible. You will never have post in your pocket unless you have braise on your plate. Beggars outdoor. Goat to the endeth thou Slogard. Mind the monks in their grasps. Scrape your souls. Commit no miracles. Postpone no bills. Respect the uniform. Hold the rabbers for the cunning his plethron. Let leash the doves to the coon her coineth. Hate not have-nots. Share the wealth and spoil the wheel. Peg the pound to Tom the devil. My time is on drought. Bottle your own. Love my label like myself. Earn before eating. Drudge after drink. Credit tomorrow. Follow my dealings. Fetch my price. Buy not from dives. Sell not to Fruenden. Hear now chunk English and learn to pray plain. Lean on your lunch. No cods before me. Practice preaching. Think in your stomach. Important through the nose. By faith alone. Seasons weather. Gomorrah. Salong. Lots feed from the tide table. Oils wells in our lands. Let earwiggers livable teach you the dance. Now their laws assist them and ease their fall. For they met and mated, and bedded and buckled, and got and gave, and reared and raised, and brought twa land within hard danger, and turned them, tearing to the sea, and planted and plundered and pawned our souls, and pillaged the pounds of the extramurals, and fought and feigned with strained relations, and bequested us their ills, and recurted Cripple's Gate, and undermined lugatures, man planting 7 sisters, while wan-worn wooed woman scrubs, and turned our coats and removed their origins, and never learned the first day's lessons, and tried to mingle and managed to save the feathered foe's nest, and fouled their own, and wayleft the Arnots and ponted Vondevals of the Zogobroden, and escaped from liquidation by the heirs of their death, and were responsible for congested districts, and rolled old logs into Peter Sororary and Wefred, new woodcuts on Polly's Wharf, and erased Rachel's Lee, and rammed Dominic's Gap, and looked haggards after lazatables, and rode 80 odd winters, and struck rock oil, and forced a policeman, and collapsed at their Fizes, and Tobias and Zachary, and left off leaving off, and kept on keeping on, and roused up drink, and poured balm down, and were cuffed by their customers, and bit the dust at the foot of the pole, when in their dear Garth he gave up his goat after the battle of Malterferry. Pharaoh with fairy, 2 lie, let them. Yet they wind it back, qual his lift. Him materially, bull see boob, and rivalish devil, light in hand, helm on high, to peekaboo dirk and thicket of slumberware, till their hour with their scene be struck forever, and the book of their dates he close. He clasped and she segan her tour d'adieu. Provincia calling, solo scar hears. O Shem! O Sham! And gentle Isid Yisid gag, flipsing in the night leaves flattery, dinsindolsory to Finnegan, to sin again, and to make Grim Grandma grunt and grin again, while the first grey streaks steal silvering by for to mock their quarrels and dolly-mouth tumbling.
They near the base of the chill stair, that large incorporate licensed vintner, such as he is from former times, 9 hosts in himself, in his hydro-comic establishment, and his ambling, limphy peeping partner, the slave of the ring that worries the hand that sways the lamp that shadows the walk that bends to his bane, the busy-next man that came on the cop with the Fenian's bark, that pickled his widow, that primed the poke, that passed it round on the volunteer's plate, till it croppied the ears of the purser's rel, that kneed O'Connell up out of his doss, that shouldered Burke, that butted O'Hara, that woke the busker, that gratanned his crowd, that bucked the jiggers to rhyme the ran, that flooded the roots in Arian's isles, from Malone to Clear and Carnshaw Port, to Slyn a Gollow and clean the pockets and ransom the ribs of all the listeners lewd and lay that bought the ballad that Hosty made. Anyhow, the matter is a troublous and a penniless. Have they not called him at many's their mock indignation meeting? Vehemens, vengeance, vective volleying, inwader and outlander, the notables crashing libels in their Sullivan's mounted beards about him, their right renounceable patriarch? Heinz cans everywhere in this, and the Swanee, her Ainsel, and Earwaker's family sock that they smuggled to life between them, roaring, Big Riley was the worst, free booze for the man from the Nark. Sure, he was never worth the cornerful fark. And his Banishee's bedpan, she's a queer old bite of a tark, as they wendled their zing-away wivewoods from his find me cool's moist opulent vinery, hijacking through the nagging neck pass as they hauled home with their hogsheads, axe postulating and claiming cowled consolation, sir some cordial, from the blue funk fires of the Dipper and the Martian's frost. Use they not, and no small town traders, to abhors off from him, the yet unregendered thunderslog, whose spro cunneth none lord made undeciding, how betwixt wifely rule and mens consia recti, then himale man, all unbracing to omni-woman, but now she-dropping his hitches like any maid-of-ale opposite, Orsa riders in Idenhall? Ah, dear, oh dear, and her Ilian, and his William, when they were all there now, matin marked for looking on, at the Carryfore with Aulus Plautius, their happy ass Claudius, and then and to the Trivials, and their bivouac, and his monomyth. Ah ho! Say no more about it. I'm sorry. I saw. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say I saw. Give there not two amongst us, after all events, or so grunts a leading head dromedary, some together gush of still and buttle, you know, that insofar forth as all up and down the whole concreation say, efficient first gets there finally every time. And as a complex matter of pure form for those excesses and that pasfault hard-hearingness from their eldfar in grips and rumblions through fresh taint and old treason, another like that alter, but not quite such an ander, and still and but one, not all the self-same, and but still one, just the mame, and encore emihim may always, with a little difference, till the latest up-to-date so early in the morning have evertheless been all made amenable. Yet he begot 'em. Let us, wherefore, tearing ages, presently preposterose a snatch vote of thanks a lot to the huskiest coaxing experimenter that ever gave his best hand into Chancerex, wishing him with his famblings no end of slow poison and a mighty broad venue for themselves between the Devil's Punch Bowl and the deep angle seaboard, that they may gratefully turn a deaf ear clooshed upon the desperanto of Willy-nully, their shareholders from Taft to Olaf, that will curse them below par and mar with their descendants, shame, humbug, and profit, to green mould upon mildew over jaundice, as long as there's wagtail surtax to a test case on Enver man. We have to have them whether the will like it or not. They'll have to have us now, and then we're here on their spot. Scant hope theirs to ours to escape life's high carnage of perindentity by subsisting piecemeal upon variables. Bloody certainly have we got to see to it ere smellful demise surprends us on this concrete, that down the gullies of the eras we may catch ourselves looking forward to what will in no time be staring you larrikins on the post face in that multi-mirror megaron of returning ties, world without end to end. So there was a Rorty, who in Diffling's board did, with his soldering iron, spade away hammerlegs, and where there was a fair young, who was playing her game of, and said she, you rockabye, will you peddle in my bog? And he sod her in Ireland, paved her way from Maidenhead to Youghal. And that's how Humphrey, champion Emir, holds his own. Shy sweet, she rests.
Or show pawn him now, will you? Durg Rudd face should take Patrick's purge. Hawkway in his hip-high berserk, third position of Concord. Excellent view from front. Sidame, female imperfectly masking male. Red spot his brow brand. Women's the prey. Thons the dullers kongs yogs loggers wagons line. Private judgers change here for Luther's town. Only Romans keep your seats. The Drew all ladies please to our great metro trollops. Leary, 20-ton nearly. He's plotting kings down for his villa's extension. Gaze at him now in momentum, as his bridges are blown to babby rags by the lee of the hulk upright on her orbits, and the heave of his juniper arcs in action. He's naval, I see. Poor little Tartanelle, her dinties are chattering, the strait she's in, the bullock she bears. Her smirk is smeeching behind her for her hills. By the queer quick twist of her mob cap, and the lift of her shift at random, and the rate of her gait, I'm going of pace, 2 thinks at a time. Her country I'm proud of. The field is down. The race is their own. The galleon man jovial on his bucky brown nightmare. Big Rob nigging his Lilliputana. 1-to-1 bore 1. The datter, Io sleeps in peace, And the twilling sons, Ganymede, Garrymore, turn in trot and trot, but old Paramere goes it at a gallop, Bosford and Phosphorine, 1-to-1 on. Oh, her fairy satellite, casting such shadows to Persia's blind. The man in the street can see the coming event. Photo flashing it far too wide. It will be known through all Urania soon. Like jealous joy, titaning fear. Like rumor reeing round the planets. Like China's dragon snapping jappets. Like Rogad Grey up the east. Saturn's day boost besets Phoebe's nearest. Here's the flood, and the flaxen flood that's to come over hapless Ireland. Is there no one to Malahide live and her Betty's ship? Or who'll buy her rosebuds, jetty black rosebuds, Ninslows of Nivea, non-paps of Nan? From the fall of the fig to doom's last post, every ephemeral anniversary, while the park's police peals peering by 4 to weight down morals from County Bublin. That trainer's trundling. Quick. Pay up. Kick. She had to kick a laugh at her old stick in the block, the way he was slogging his paunch about, ebid doubled, meat oft mate on, like Hail King Willow, the robber, cane maker's mace and waxened capapee. But the Terence brand on his hot-wet brow. At quick in the morning, and her lamp was all askew and a trembly wick in her, ring-zingry. She had to spot forth, she had to kick her, too thick of the wick of her pixie's lumph, wide liquoring Jessup the smoky chimney, and her duffed cover-point of a wickety batter. Whatever she druv behind her stumps for a tiddlyish wink through the tunnel-cleft bag-slops of the rising blunders Yorkers as he stood and stottered and trotted and trumpered to see he had Lord Larry's Bleckham's and red Bobby Apples. Tickled her innings to consort pitch at kick-slockin' in the warm. Tippatonguing him on in her pigeony linguish with a flick at the bales for lubrication to scorch her faster. Ye heck, ye hawk, ye hockey hiremonger. Magrath, he's my pecker, he is, for bricking up all my old Kent road. He'll win your toss, flog your old Tom's bowling, and I dare ye, barrack buller, to break his duck. He's posh. I love him. We're powering all Oogster till the MCCs run googly. Declare to ashes and testy his match. 3 for 2 will do for me, and he for thee, and she for you. Go easy, oh easy, for the grace of the fields, or hooly-pooly cuppy. We'll both be by and by caught by the slit for fear he'd tire and burst his Dunlops and waken her bonny Barneys, making his booby babies. The game old merryman, square to leg, with his lolly-wide towel hat and his hopsy socks and his Wisden's boss and his nursery's pinafore and his gentleman's grip and his playboy's plunge and his flanelly feely-fooling treading her hump and humble down like a maiden well-head ovalled her and her crease where the pads of her punishments ought to be by womanish rights, when Keek, the hen in the Doran's shanty queer, began in a kickery key to laugh it off. Yea, nay. Oh, the way she was wucked to doodle-do by her gallows bird. How's that? No ball, he carries his bat. 932 not out, at all times long past conquering cock of the Morgans.
How blame us? Cocorico. Armiger and ever-fasting horde. Rico. So the bill to the bow, as the bell to the bow. We herewith pleased return auditors' thanks for those in their favors since safely enjoined. Cocoree. Tell a man, till a me. Tabernacle and Tipperary. Sons, travelers, and company, and their carriageable touchers, tanks tight and tyne for her contractions, tug awards his personnel. Echo, Coree, Coreco, you, me. Well, we all unite through folly and rendering gratias, well, between love's repast, begging your honor's pardon for, well, exclusive pictorial rights of hear her fond tip lady, his weak rations appearing in next eon's issue of the Neptune Centennial and Trinonville light tour with the wildest circulation round the whole universe. Ecolo, Cori, Coro, Cori, Corico. How me, oh my, you ho, my, you to I o. Thanks furthermore, the modest Miss Gimglow and neat Master Metterson, who so kindly profiteered their sir wishes as demisel of honor and, well, as strain bearer respectively, and the cordialest brief nod and chin danky shin to well patient ringacin as prevenit by your leave, to all such occasions, detachable, replaceable, thanks to an act, as well as his auricular of Malthus, the Promethean para to know whether, which first, pray go, taught love's lightning the way, pity shown, to well conduct itself. Mercy, good shot, only please don't mention it. Come all ye goat fathers and grown mothers, come all ye makers and pile drivers, come all ye labor-saving devisers and chargeladen dividers, firefinders, water workers, deeply condole with him. All that is still life with death in your born, all very bump saps, yet bound to be, to do and to suffer, every creature everywhere, and your pleas kindly feel for her. While the dapple gray dawn drags nearing nigh, for to wake all drones, the drowsy of Dublin. Humperfelt and Aniska, wedded now evermore in acetomoses by the ground plan of the place hunter, whist bow and Donabella, Totovir and Esqueminer, whoso shall separate fetters to new desire, repeals an act of union to unite in bonds of shemency. Oh yes, withdraw your member. Closure. This chamber stands adjourned. Such precedent is largely a cause of lack of collective contingencies among Don Nelly's orchard as lifelong the shady side of Fair Brothers Field. Humbo, lock your cackle up, and nigh blow your wickle out. Tuck away the table sheet. You never wet the tea, and you may go right to way back to the Auntie de la Via Humphrey after that. Retire the rest without first disturbing your neighbor, mankind, or of baffling descriptions. Others are as tired of themselves as you are. Let each one learn to bore himself. It is strictly requested that no calm smoking, spitting, pub chat, wrestle rounds, coarse courting, smut, etc. will take place amongst those hours so devoted to repose. Look behind, before you strip you. Disrobe, clothed in the strictest secrecy which privacy can afford. Water non to be discharged coram grate and ex window. Never divorce in the bedding the glove that will give you away. Maid maud ninnies nay but blabs to amama. For your life, would you? She to her bosom friend who does all chores. And what do you think my Madeline saw? This ignorant mostly sweeps it out along all the rather old corporators. Have you heard of one humble down jungleman, how he bet Bryn and Bush playing peg and palm? The Malden River that gets its dues, adding a din, a ding, or do. Thence thou laundresses. Oh, muddle me more about the Maggies. I mean, Bonnie Mage Ellis and Brownie Mag Dillon. Attention at all. Each ditcher's dastard and dumpling will let us know about it if you have paid the mulchman by whether your rent is open to be foreclosed or are back in your heiresses. This is seriously meant. Here is a homelet, not a hothel. That's right, old Oldham. All in fact as soon as all of old right as anyways ever and very old place, where he, when scalded of the cowerfowl to beat the bounds by here at such a point of time as this is for a Samuel up Allwood's halfpence and Rivet's agent, half back from 3 gangs multiplussed by on a 20 lot add all to a fiver with the deuce of Oromers numbers L a fee and do little ones with the caboose uh, on him upheld for thrushes mistiles, yet singing out his parasangs in Cornish token. Mean Farthree, East End apple celery, old laddie, he high hole, pole side patrolman seekers sin, Townsend's, Twaquam, Crumlin quiet down from his hunger. He would mac sicker of inklet goods foretold Erishingem of light Turkling Etherani of Thrunkle's Windopes. More, unless we were never so wrong taken, if he brought his boots to pause in peace, the one beside the other one, right on the road. He would seize no sound or from cache or cave beyond the flow of wand was gypsying water, telling him now, telling him all about ham and livery. Stay and toast ham and livery, buttermore with marmalade to Waker oats for him on livery. Furor, fear horror. At last it passed. Lob at cod, the heron, or when then mong them three.
Hiss, which we had only our haze light to see with, cert, in our point of view, me and my oxy, Jimmy Darcy, hadn't we, Jimmy? Who to scene with? Kiss, no kid, captain, which he stood us, 3 jolly post boys. First a couple of Mountjoys and Nutty Woodbines with his Cadbury's choculars, pepped from our Theodatra Regal's drolleries, pantomime, in the snug of the Cambridge arms of Teddy Ales while we was laying. Crown jewels to a peanut. Was his stepmarm, old nose-heavy, or a widower? Which he said, lads, a-taking low his whitby hat, lopping off the froth and wishing, with all respectfulness to the old country. Tomorrow, comrades, we, his long life strength and cured screaming loan to our all-hallowed king, the pitcher that he's turned to weld the wall. Lord lengthen him. His standpoint was to belt and blutcher him afore the whole pleading church hall and submarine bar yonder. But he made no class at all in port and cemented Paulships between our trucers, being a refugee. Didn't he, Jimmy? Who true to me? Sish, honeysuckler. What my young lady here, Fred Watkins, Bulger Fred, all the way from Melmouth to Nadle, she calls him, dip the colors, pet, when he commit his certain questions, viva viz, the secret empire of the snake, which it was on a point of our sutting down. How was it, Jimmy? Who was Cinnarettes to declare? This, touching our Phoenix Rangers nuisance at the meeting of the waitresses, the dainty lines, Elsie's from Chelsea's, the 2 Lego legels in bloom, and those pest of Parkies, Twitch, Thistle, and Charlock, were they for giving up their fogging trespasses by order which we foregathered, he must be raw in cane sugar. The party, no. Jimmy MacColithock, who trespass against me. Briss. That's him, with his wig on, a chewing of his maple gum. That's our grandpapa, Mr. Beardall, an accomplished burgomaster, a great one among the very greatest, which he told us privates out of his own scented moof he used to was, my lads, afore this wine act come, what say, are Jimmy the chapel goer? Who fears all masters? Hi, Jocko, now log, my own sweet boozy love, which he puts his feeler to me behind the beggar's bush. Does Freda, don't you be an mookie? Carry one, he says, though we marooned through this oiled we must spy a hind on honeysuckler. Now his old face is hard alone, with his defenses down during his weapon still stand, says my Fred, and James Zyme here, which Pippet, she simply must, she says, our pet. She'll do a retroussy from her point of view. Way you fly, like a thrush, to keep her flounces off the grass while paying the wet minnots muses shall visit, and pair her fies for him with just one curl after the cad came back, which we thought he wore as a gunner, and his corkiness lay up 2 bottles of joy with a shade he had by Fred and a final Oloroso, which he was warming to. My right, Jimmy, my old brown freer? Oh, Stoller, oh so mine. Following idly up to Seat Point, neath King Mount Shadow, that ilk for eke of us, whose Natham's band, whose hofta hooded welcome Warsaw, howdy you do, a Holly Mary, Ivy Sad, Witcher and Wower, Mr. Black Atkins, and you, Tanya Panny, Trooper Twos, were you there? Was truce of snow moon-mounted snow? Or did Vulcan hang o'er earth in umber hue his Fulman bomb? Number 2 coming, full inside, was glimpsed the mean amongst of cloud? Or did pitter rain fall in a sprinkling? If the waters could speak as they flow. Timgle, Tom, pow the bell. Izzy's busy down in the dell. Mizpah low, UU number 1, in deep humidity. Listen, misled peerless, please. You are, of course. You miss him so, to Lisseltoe. Of course, my pledge between us. There's no one, Noel, like him, here to hear. Esh doles at dolesy. Since Alan Rogue loved Arapogue, it's all kill doghow fair. Tris, only trees such as these, were those, waving there, the barka tree, the o'briar tree, the rowan tree, the o'cornell tree, the behen shrub near windy arbor, the Miguel o'dendron moor. Trem, all the trees in the wood, they trembled, humbled, when they heard the stop press from Domesday's air world.
Tis. 2 pretty mistletots ribboned to a tree, uprose Liberator and Fancy they were free. 4 witty missy wives winking under hoods made lasses like lavs love maypole riding, and dotted our green with tricksome couples, 50-50, their children's hundred. So childish pence took care of parents' pounds, and many made money the way in the world where rush roads to riches crossed slums of lice, and the cause of it all he forged himself ahead like a blazing urban orb, brewing treble to drown grief, giving and taking meom and tuam, playing milliards with his 3 golden balls, making party capital out of landed self-interest, light on a slavey but weighty on the bourse, our hugest commercial emporialist, with his sons booing home from afar and his daughters bridling up his side. Finner! How did he bank it up, swank it up at the whaler in the punt, by a guinea by a groat, his index on the balance and such wealth into the bargain, with the bogey which he snatched in the baggage coach ahead? Going forth on the prowl, Master Jackill, under night and creeping back, dog to hide over morning. Humbly to fall and cheaply to rise, exposition of failures. Through Duffy's blunders and McKenna's insurance for upper 10 and lower 5, the band played on. As one generation tells another, off to the fall. First, for a change of a 7 days' license, he wandered out of his farmer's health and so lost his early parish life. Then, 'twas in Fenland, occidentally of a sudden 6 June-looking flame faces straggled wild out of their turns through his parson-fired wicket, showing all shapes of striplings in sleepless tights. Promptly whom after, in undated times, very properly a dozen generations anterior to themselves, a main chanced to burst and misflooded his fortunes, wrothing foul play over his fives court, and his fine poultry yard, wherein were spared a just 2 of a feather in waiting room only. Next, upon due reflotation, up started 4 hurricane gales to smithereen his plate-glass house walls, and the slate for accounts his keeper was cooking. Then came 3 boy bugle-horners who counter-bezeled and cross-bugled him. Later on in the same evening, 2 Hussites absconded through a breach in his bylaws and left him, the infidels, to pay himself off in kind remembrances. Till, ultimate him, fell the grounding barley straw when an explosion of his distilleries death-dumped all his dry goods to his most favoured sin flute and dropped him, what remains of a heptarch, leer-eyed and letterish, weeping worry-bound on his bank rump. Pep, pay-bearer, sure and sorry, at foot of oh-ho-ho honest policist. On never again by Phoenix, swore on him Lloyds, not for beaten wheat, not after Sir Joe Mead's father, thanks. They know him, the Covenanter, by rote at least, for a chameleon at last, in his true false heaven colours from ultra-violent to sub-red tissues. That's his last try-on to march through the grand triumphal arch. His rain-bolts shot, never again. How you do that like, Mr. Chimepiece? You got nice yum plemyums. Pray paid my promisals. Agreed, Woo Welsher. He was chog-full to be state on earn as in hiving of fox-old conningness, but who, hey, honey, for all values of his latters, intergerimost, was the foremast of the firm. At folk mood hailed, at part far wailed, accumulated concloud, noir, nebob of Nephihilm. After all, what followed for apprentice sake, since the now nighs nearing as the yet says highs hin. Jeebies, ugh, keck, ptah, that was an ill man. Jawboos, putty good, this is for true a sweetish man. But Jum Bluffer, Baghdad, sir, yond would be for a once over our all-honoured Christmas-tide Eastered man. Fourth position of solution. How Johnny, finest view from horizon. Tableau, final. Two me see. Male and female unmask we him. Begun by gun. Who now Bruth's old brawn? Dawn. The dape of his name shielder's scalp. Help! After having drummed all he done. Hun, worked out to an inch of his core. More, ring down, while the queen bee he stagger-horned blesses her bliss for to feel her funny man's functions tag. Rumbling, tears, tears, and tears. Rounds. Book 3. Done and in the bag. Oh, that was the end of Book 3, Chapter 4, and the second part of that chapter, and the end of the entirety of Book 3.
That's crazy.
Craziness. 590 pages in. Whoever could have guessed? But here we are, and we're still having fun. 6, 7, or 8 months later, or however long it's been since we started reading.
Oh, 100%. There was one section that I wrote my exclamation, yes! I was like, I read the shit out of that.
I look forward to getting to that. And it was a kind of a weird one because we had the guest readers, but it was nice to hear some voices. I haven't heard them for a couple of weeks, so it was nice to hear them again.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think of our 3 readers?
I mean, I think they all did fantastic. And I also think that, like, your buddy Patrick, I was like, whew, that's right, he's in theater.
He's an actor, yeah.
It was funny because an idea came to me that I'll share it with you off the air, but because I don't want to be held to anything. But right. I was like, there was some inspiration that they gave me in the midst of this that I think that I think is really kind of great. Excellent, that's exciting. Well, let's hear from I'm going to just play my post-interview with each of them, and it's all just in one big chunk. So we'll hear what Nikhil, Patrick, and Bridie have to say after their readings. So, Nikhil, what did you think of that text? Reading it through, you don't have to understand what it means.
Well, it was curious. On my second time reading it, I tried to figure out what it means. I only noticed a few fixations that I could pick out any form of a pattern. He seems to be talking about a man and a woman more than once, more often on this back page, but just one. He mentions it somewhere here on this front page. Other times I'm noticing that the words he uses are either A, are real words but don't make sense in the context, B, are just mixes of two words like boom mooster, well, actually that may not be a word, or dream wings. And I think there was a third, which are just completely made up. Like I've just never heard of them before.
Yeah, he makes a lot of portmanteaus of putting words together that mean two different things to create a new thing. He also uses over 40 different languages in this book. So he goes and takes words from other languages to create new words. And so he's really testing the limits of the English language.
Huh. Okay.
And so you're a polyglot. You speak 3 different languages.
I can speak French, English, and a tad bit of Mandarin, I guess. I could pick up a few words here that look like mispronounced French words, like cauchemar, or he directly said mon beau, you see?
Right.
And that was pure French. But other ones almost sound, I have no experience with this language, but almost sound German-ish, or Germanic.
Yeah.
Fahrmann, I don't know.
It's very perceptive. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's one of those opportunities to read something where meaning isn't really the point. The point is the content. And so you'll notice that in that big first paragraph that you have, in that the major paragraph in the section you read, there are no periods in there. It's all semicolons that take you all the way through.
Notice.
Yeah, so the whole thing, it's a single statement all the way through, from prospector all the way to slogo slee.
I'm not very good with sentences. Sometimes I just go on and on forever, and I can do a bit of run-on. So,
well, it's interesting because I think it's interesting while you're writing your book is that some people would say that Joyce here is breaking all the rules of the English language, because you can't have a sentence this long. But Joyce is saying, I can do whatever I want. It's my book, and so it's a good reminder that there's things out there that really sort of push against the boundaries.
I guess the structure. No, I wouldn't really know, but usually sentences, like when I'm trying to do a speech or, I don't know, an oral presentation at school, usually sentences are my cue to breathe.
Right.
So maybe instead it's just like at this point at this point with this long a sentence, you breathe whenever you want. It just doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be cohesive.
Yeah, or you don't breathe, and it's a run on that's sort of supposed to.
Right.
What do you think about the idea that this book is written about trying to define dreaming? How this is something inside of a dream, and so that it doesn't necessarily have to make sense, or it doesn't necessarily have to be cohesive. Do you think something like this makes, like, how would you write a dream?
I appreciate and I think admire the way that he's writing this as if it's a dream, because I guess dreaming isn't supposed to really be cohesive. Right. It's almost like when you're in a dream, it makes sense. It feels, well, depends on the dream, but it usually feels pretty real. And then when you wake up, you can't remember what that really felt like. Well, for me. So the way he's describing it here, that I would like, I couldn't tell if this is how a dream feels. It's only in a dream I can tell what I would need to write to describe it. So who knows? Maybe he's got it right.
Maybe. So that was terrific. It was so good to have you join us on the podcast. I hope that maybe you could be inspired to read a little more of this kind of crazy stuff as you go forward and as you're writing your book.
It's interesting, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck with your book. We'll look for it in bookstores everywhere, anytime now, right?
Okay. All right. No.
All right. Okay. Oh, Patrick Robinson. I don't know why you doubted yourself. What a wonderful reading. Thank you so much for appearing on Wake this week.
Thank you.
Tell us, how do you feel after assailing Joyce?
I feel great, and I feel like I've read something a little bit dirty.
I think so. Yeah, Joyce has his own certain proclivities that to be said. I mean, there's also way more cricket imagery in there than I've seen in anything I've seen this week. So that's I'm always pleased to see.
Well, there you go.
The great game of cricket referenced so often. So how does tackling this kind of text as an actor, because very clearly the actor in you rose his head up very quickly there.
Well, sometimes when you have no idea what you're saying or reading, you just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You just make something up.
Yeah, and you've had 4 Guinnesses as well.
Well, that helped. Absolutely.
Well lubricated. Well, thank you so much for appearing on Wake. It really means a lot, and I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. how'd you feel?
I felt a little silly. Yeah.
A little. That's okay. That's the second time you've had a chance of reading.
Yeah.
Was that easier or harder
I
than
think
the
it
first
was
time?
harder because before you gave me some time to practice.
I think also last time you didn't have braces.
Yeah.
Is it hard to sort of speak, Joyce? I think you're the only person who's ever been on Wake who has braces.
It's a bit more difficult.
A bit more difficult just to get your lips around those words.
Yeah.
But you did so well. You got all the words.
Really?
You did. I mean,
I feel like I did.
no, you absolutely did a great job. I think you really it seemed like you really hit a flow toward the end there, and you got a bit more.
It was fun at the end. It was
Yeah.
like more rhyming and like a lot of alliteration.
Exactly.
It's fun.
So you're an aspiring writer yourself. You like writing things.
I do like writing.
So what does this make you think when you look at this as a writer?
Oh gosh.
Like, does this make you feel like?
Makes me feel like, what was the writer thinking?
Okay.
He must have had a very interesting mind.
He sure did. Yeah.
I wonder what his writing was like when he was younger and wasn't like
Yeah.
blind and stuff.
Yeah. There's a book upstairs I have that I'll give to you. It's called Dubliners, which he wrote when he was younger, which you'll quite like, actually. So I think you're just about ready to read that. So we'll try that one next. But
Does it make sense?
it does.
Or is it
It's
like
a lovely little book. But do you think that the way that he writes makes you feel like you have freedom to do whatever you want when you write? Because look what he's doing.
Yeah.
Whatever he
and
wants.
He's pretty famous.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So one day you'll be famous too. Bridie Malone, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. And that was your birthday present.
My only one?
Yeah.
That was great, yeah.
Thank you, brides.
You're
You're the
welcome.
best.
I know.
See you 10 minutes.
I love the C 10 minutes. You're like, I won't take you for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was true. Thanks for indulging me with my
course.
my guests. But each of those guests I would have loved to have had on for a full episode, but just not. And poor Nikhil, he probably would have really his mind might have melted if I'd have asked him to read too much more, because he's so analytical and thoughtful. And so if I would,
I love the way he stopped himself to be like, "This is this," but whatever.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what my brain was actively doing when we first started reading the book.
Right.
And I think that this kind of goes back to what we've been saying for the entirety of this process, is that there's a way of learning on how to approach books and literature that's just like ingrained in us, and that this is really about breaking away from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's always interesting to filter it through the eyes of teenagers whose brains are so malleable right now, and they're so used to learning things every day, compared to trying to get an older person to read it who've sort of shut themselves off from the idea that this is difficult, so it's too hard. And that's really, with Patrick, a hard time convincing him to do it, because he thought, this isn't my thing, I don't know anything about it, so I'm going to be humiliated and I'm not going to do it. And then he realized that it was just like any other kind of script.
So like, Patrick, I have been humiliating myself for 35 episodes so far. You're fine.
No, I was just thinking today's reading that you really have found your voice in your.
I have. You know why? Because I was like, just turn the brain. I finally got to the point where I was like, just turn the brain off.
Yeah, exactly.
Just turn the brain off.
Yeah. So we flow through nicely. Yeah, there was lots of interesting things in that chapter, and it's funny that Oxford Classics say that we're into realism after the surrealism, but
okay, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting considering what the academics, sort of standing with a little bit of distance from it, are able to authoritatively say that you should be getting from this. But I don't know. I'm still not hugely convinced.
Neither am I. I got a new possible tattoo.
Ooh.
If the waters could speak as they flow. That is so good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, nice.
But asphalt body and concrete soul is still winning out.
Amazing. I keep thinking about it just about every day. It's just like, oh man, okay, do I need to? Or I was thinking today about going into the resources at Fleet or at Finnwake and going, okay, maybe I need to find something that is an embedded, buried reference to something that I care about in a different way. So it's something that's sort of coded in a Joycean phrase. What can I pull out that doesn't look like anything, but is actually coded to mean something important to me, right? As opposed to the phrase. So, but yeah, I think about it more than I probably should.
I mean, I'm looking up Finnegans Wake tattoos right now, and this one, and lived and laughed and loved and left. I was like, okay, but that's so Eat, Pray, Love. It's not.
Yeah. There's a beautiful one that I found. I'll try and find it and link it in the show notes of someone who had basically got a stylized half sleeve of Anna Livia. And it's basically a woman, but her hair is flowing like a river, and it's a beautiful wake tattoo. But yeah, I don't think there's many out there. But
no,
for good reason. There's one thing that came up in that chapter on page 581, which I found really interesting. I was going to bring this up in the next episode, in our summary episode, but I'll talk about it now. Is the idea of the monomyth, and so he mentions on 581. So it's a coinage for Joyce here that he mentions this idea of, he says, and his monomyth, aho, say no more about it. And so this is something that Joseph Campbell kind of grabbed onto with
Hero of a Thousand Faces, right?
Yeah, and so Joseph Campbell wrote the Finnegans Wake skeleton key. Our previous guest, Bobby, suggested that maybe he had some help from Joyce, but this idea of the monomyth became kind of important to him in sort of thinking about the Wake overall. And then a couple years later, or a little while later, he wrote The Hero of a Thousand Faces, which is, of course, a hugely important text when it comes to storytelling. Right, and so one of the things that sort of encapsulates is the idea of the hero's journey, which was based on this structure that he got from the Wake. So the Wake begat the monomyth, which begat the Hero of the Thousand Faces, which begat the hero's journey, which then was used in screenwriting classes all over the world. And it's interesting that George Lucas in the 70s came out and said, if there were no hero's journey written in Hero of the Thousand Faces, there would be no Star Wars, because everything was based on that, obviously, the structure there. So is it drawing too long a thread to say if there's no Finnegans Wake, there's no Star Wars? I don't think it is. I think it's valid.
I don't think so either. It was funny. I was just thinking about this today. I was like, if there were no talkies, like I started doing the line of cinema in my head, and I was like, yo, as much as people like hate Tron, I love Tron. I've always been a huge Tron head. Like, especially the first Tron, I was like, without Tron, you don't get your Wild Robots, you don't get your Pixar. It's because they were like, oh wait, we can use. I think that this is a fair assumption, and I am willing to be on that hill with you.
Yeah. So this is something that came up in a book by David Collard, which I'm going to talk about a lot in future episodes. It's a really interesting book called Multiple Joyce. He writes 100 essays all about Joyce's life and career. It's a really interesting book. And so he makes this point about Star Wars. So it's certainly not an original idea. And one of the things that he mentions in that book, when he's talking about no Star Wars, because if there's no Wake, is he also talks about the creator of the Game of Thrones TV series wrote his master's thesis at Trinity College, Dublin, and he wrote his thesis on Finnegans Wake.
I believe that.
So Finnegans Wake, if there's no Finnegans Wake, there's no Game of Thrones TV series. I mean
that's okay.
So that's an interesting thing, the idea of the monomyth, which came up there. And as I said, I was going to talk about that in a future episode when we were summarizing, but it felt like I needed to bring it up when it came up in that episode.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, page 580, and to make Grim Grandma Grunt.
So good.
Come on.
So good.
I mean, that might be the tattoo.
I'm going to ask you to aim a little bigger.
Yeah, I know, but still, there's some fun options.
I also love. Will you pedal in my bog? Excuse me.
The filth. I mean, obviously, we haven't talked much about Joyce's letters to Nora, but we have massive archives filled with all of the letters that Joyce wrote to Nora, and he did not hold things back. His mind was a colourful place, and not
Sounds like you're
safe
being
for
kind.
work. Yeah, not safe for work. It's yes.
I also love "Stop that war and feel this feather." Like, I loved that.
Yeah,
While hovering dream wings. I love the phrase pseudo selves in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The yet unregendered thunderslog.
It's so good.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, it's lots of interesting things. Oh, and an interesting phrase that kind of recalls what parenting is. For they met and mated and bedded and buckled and got and gave and reared and raised.
So good.
I mean, like, I feel personally attacked right now, James.
I feel like that's the tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the beginning of that chapter, I felt so bad for you because you were thrown into a biblical maelstrom of begats.
I was like, here we go.
Onofrius.
I was like,
talk about him 50 times.
I was like, sure. And then I heard you chuckle, which actually motivated me. It pushed me through because you're like, this is ridiculous. And I was like, it is. Thank you.
Yeah, every now and then you get on a run and you think, what this chapter is, this paragraph is standing all on its own, trying to do a different thing. And when we get to the next paragraph, we're going to be off it and off to a different kind of thing. Just like on the bottom of page 580, I started my read and then I went, this is suddenly got a rhythm to it and a flow to it. It felt like the old woman who swallowed the fly.
Oh yeah, and then he said, "Nope, thank you."
Yeah, but yeah, volunteers played till it cropped the ears of Purse Rail that kneed Connell out of his doss, that shouldered Burke, that butted O'Hara, that woke the busker, Grattan his crowd, that bucked the jiggers, that rhymed the ran, that flat the like. This really feels like that. That swallowed a dog to eat the cat. It was so. Yeah. I found that really, really interesting. Like lots of really, really fun things to say as we get to the end. But I'm not sure that realism is where I would put this.
The longer we've sat with Oxford World's Classics, you already know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, sure. Like I think the thing that I find most disappointing, I guess is the right word, is the sanitation of it. Right? And it's like, trying so hard to force, a round peg in a square hole sometimes, and they are afraid to say we've read whole sections which are about nothing but like fornicating and defecating, and they just like using the bathroom in the park. No.
Yeah.
That was not what this was. This man was drunk and doing say the truth. I feel like there's like a level of sanitation that they're trying to put on us. And I think, is it because it is Oxford?
It's disappointing though, because academia shouldn't be a place of conservatism necessarily.
I agree.
It should be the place where you can try these things. And there is plenty of room for filth in academia. I know lots of people who are working in sexuality studies who are writing stuff that is heavily uncensored, and you wouldn't want your kids to read it if you didn't want them learning interesting things. But in a scholarly sense, it's important. And so censoring something and saying, we put a big black bar over this word because it's a filthy human behavior.
And that's the way it feels to me. Like, it always feels like the further we've gotten into it, and the more that, again, not understanding but deciphering how he's using the language, I'm like, you're sanitizing it so much that I feel like it's pulling away from the intention that Joyce had.
It is.
And also like his voice,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it comes out in the text, like when Patrick read his section, and the first thing he says is, I feel like I read something a little bit dirty. But he didn't say that word there. It made it very clear that it's dirty. It was the entire voice of the section where he went, I don't know what I just said, but I feel like I've just sort of said something that I wouldn't want my mother to hear. And it's a really interesting time. So yeah, the tone. I mean, let's listen. I mean, so we have three more. So we have this one and then two more sections coming up of the Oxford World's Classic, and then we're done with them forever. So we're going to have... I bet the editor of the Oxford World Classic is sitting listening right now with one single tear rolling down his face.
Be sad, stay sad, you know.
He's going to blame his editor. Oh, it's not my fault. It was... Lord Oxford wouldn't let me. But here is what Oxford World's Classic summarises each of these sections as read. I'll follow the page and line numbering convention standard for this text. So as I said earlier, we read 3-4 Part 2, pages 572 to 590. Dawn, an intensely structured chapter and a shift, relatively speaking, from the surrealism of all that's gone before to a degree of realism. We seem to float with two narrators through the chapel Izzard Inn at night, describing the sleeping inhabitants, the porters, and others, all versions of characters already encountered. A small nocturnal domestic drama unfolds. One of the twins, Jerry, wakes. His mother soothes him back to sleep. The parents have sex. Dawn approaches. The husband slumbers, anxious with money problems. The chapter rotates around 4 points of view. Camera positions signalled by 4 musical chords. 1, first position of harmony, say, a, ha, on 559. 2, second position of discordance, mi-si-do, on page 564. HC. 3, third position of conquered, Sidame, 582, HCE. 4th position of solution, 2 me C, 590, taking us back to CEH. And if that isn't some academic speak right there, I don't know what is. Anyway, at 572.18 to 576.9, we have a legalistic interlude. Complex versions of treacherous familial relations are retold first in an ancient Roman context and secondly in a modern Irish setting.
I agree.
Yeah. 576.10 to 578.1. Jerry, or Shem, sighs in his sleep. ALP is still in attendance. A prayer to road builders. Guides through life is voiced. Does Shem stir? No, it's only the wind. 578.1 to 580.22. More on HCE and ALP. The strictures they live by. The grind of laissez-faire progress. 580.23 to 582.27. Back to bed. Which felt very Macbethian to me. HCE's reputation as an outsider is reported, but the narrators agree that they have to put up with him. 582.28 to 584.26, third position of Concord. HCE and ALP have sex, as seen from outside, projected onto the blind of their bedroom window. Various forms of innuendo are provided through imagery of planetary movement, horse racing, and at 583 to 4, cricket. 584.27 to 587.2, Dawn Cockerel. Thanks are given and pity is begged for. Sex winds down. No more disturbance. Things are as they were. Just sounds of water or wind in the trees. 587.3 to 588.34. 3 privates describe meeting a man in a pub, or HCE. 2 of them are called Jimmy Darcy and Fred Watkins. And it says, note, Fred Atkins provided evidence for the defence in Wild versus Queensbury. And are quizzed about events in Phoenix Park. The morning news will reveal all. 588.35 to 590. How HCE made his money. His insurance scammed. Now rumbled. And that's how they decide to end book 3 with the descriptions.
HCE ain't no good.
Nope, no good at all. But at least he's getting some tonight.
Yeah, you silver lining
exactly
at all times.
I mean, although if you have to describe your sex life by using cricket imagery, then you may be doing it wrong. I'm not sure.
And now there's other people maybe listening to this with a single tear rolling down their face. I am a great lover of cricket. It's probably my favourite sport, so I'm certainly not making fun. But yeah, the imagery of that I used is quite decorative. So I've never seen cricket played live until recently when there were some students playing it on campus, right? And I had to catch myself because Toby, the way I sat and I was just like, I'm in awe. I'm amazed. And these students turn around like, who is this man staring at us play cricket? And I was like, I should go. I should leave. I should go.
It's a wonderful game. But it's one of those things where you have to kind of watch it where in a country where they play it properly, Australia or India or England or somewhere where the crowd knows what's going on, because it can, and especially 2020 cricket, it's a pretty spectacular game. But
because I was like, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah,
and I'm trying real hard to figure it out.
I love it. Yeah. It's a game of patience and a game of will. It's a real battle, and I love it.
That's why you like baseball too.
Baseball. Although I watch baseball and someone goes up to bat and then they'll be up there for a while, and then the commentators will be like, "What a battle! He's faced 9 pitches. Wow, this is a real..." And I think, come on, man. In cricket, you got a guy out there for 3 straight days hitting 350 runs by himself.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. You bat until you get out. Like, you just go and go and go. And when you hit the ball, you don't have to run. So you just stay. Yeah, it's the best. Yeah. But I'll teach you about cricket one day. Yeah.
Yes.
In the future. So, yeah. So some interesting stuff going on in this chapter and the end of book 3. I mean, we're going to do our summary episode next week. So we'll talk about sort of what book 3 meant to us in total. But I mean, immediate reaction getting to the end of book 3. Obviously, book 1 was fairly accessible comparatively. Book 2 was very hard. Book 3, how do we feel?
I feel like currently book 3 is my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot to take away. I think that there's this beautiful vacillation between the difficult and the simpler is not the right word, but you know what I mean, as far as language goes. But I also think that it felt like a stretching of the legs of, and look what I can do with uncorrupted words as well.
Right.
At times, I love the stylistic shifts that are happening relatively quickly next to each other. It just feels like, while this whole book is a tour de force, it feels like every once in a while in a book, I feel like I just love that you can show that I have mastery over all these different styles.
Yeah. And it's something really interesting to see that book 3 starts 400 pages in. So you have to slog through the first 400 pages, and it's not always a slog. Sometimes it's more interesting than that. But he's almost like he's burying the lead. He's taking that and really saying, okay, you get to earn this. The good stuff comes if you stick with me. Yeah. So it's a fun one. So yeah, and it's so good to get back to reading and get back to reading this. I feel so torn because part of me is always anxious to get the next episode recorded, and then every time we read, I'm always thinking, oh, this is our third last.
It's one step closer.
Reading. Yeah, right. We only have 2 more to go. Then in book 4 is very short, and it's only 2 sections, so it's only 1 chapter, and so we're going to break that up into half. So this is our third last reading episode, although we have a handful of bonus episodes scattered in there. So we should be going. I know we've been saying in the past we're going to go into near St. Patrick's Day, but we're going to extend past that because we've got a few other ones that we want to do before we finish up. So
y'all keep coming out the woodwork.
Yeah. We're sort of helpless to resist. I don't know. I mean, I just got a great message this morning from a friend of the podcast, Tommy Mackay, who you remember from his Stramash Up episode where he read and then he did his Denty Alligator song. He's made so many different mashup songs based on Finnegans Wake that he has enough now that he's making a full album to release, and he's asked us if he can include our theme song, Meg Logue's The Ballad of Percy O'Reilly. I told Meg, and she was immediately horrified, and she was like, I put that together in 15 minutes, and then you recorded the first take. What? She's not happy. So we might actually re-record it. We might actually do a fresh version, and I might put the kids on bass and drums and see what we can make of it.
He'd love that.
Yeah, and then we'll release it on Spotify. Well, that is about all the time we have this week for Wake as we wrap up book 3. We will return next week for the ever-popular recap episode where we'll talk about all the things we've discovered. Thank you, TJ, for being here. I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Me too.
Yeah, so now you can get back to wedding planning Getting all those things in a row.
Those details.
I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk next week and talk about what we thought of Book 3. I've been Toby Malone, joined as ever by TJ Young. See you next week, triple headers. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.